Hello, everyone. Welcome to our latest webinar. This one's focused on the release that came out earlier this month. So we'll talk you through a few of the items and hopefully answer any questions. So we're going to focus on 5 kind of areas where we saw some releases that generally impact most. Especially the top 3, and then there's a couple of other ones we want to highlight. The Project Center continues to be a focus for OpenAir, improving and adding additional items to that. So we'll talk about those. They're still also focused on advanced filters. Some of it is, in my opinion, that they're cleaning up from some previous releases, and some of it is net new add-on that could be useful. They've also added a few things to the to the list views. So we'll talk about those. And then there's some additional, for those of you that use both OpenAir and NetSuite and have those connected through the standard integration, there's a few release items in here that could be very helpful. And lastly, if you are using single sign-on, there was a fairly relevant release item related to single sign-on, so we'll talk about that. With each of these, we'll talk about the impact. Can the feature benefit your organization, and any limitations or considerations? So let's jump to it. So Project Center. So for those of you not familiar, the Project Center is basically OpenAir's ongoing challenge and solution to merging task assignments and bookings. The idea here is we can see all our tasks within our project plan, and then within there we can go in and we can book resources to those tasks. You can also do it at a project level as well. And then be able to see the bookings and the project plan in the same view. And this was available to the public for quite a while now, but each release they've added new functionality. In this release, they've added the ability to customize availability indicator. So basically, what this is very similar to is being able to look at the availability of resources and be able to see if someone's overscheduled, underscheduled, and you can color code those into different categorizations so they pop out. So the new option is available under the administrative tab under projects, and then there's a link called Project Center Options, where you can go in and set your color coding. And I'm going to actually log into a sandbox after we go through these first couple, and I'll show you what this looks like in our sandbox. Ability to copy multiple values. So, they've started to introduce a little bit of drag and drop functionality. We saw it in the planner, where you can go into the planner and you can drag the planner to extend end dates. Well, they've added this to the Project Center. So you can actually go in and you can drag and drop and extend you can cut and paste as well as drag and drop up. You can drag and drop vertically as well as horizontally. So this is kind of a nice feature that allows you to basically be able to go in and not have to hand code, but just with your mouse drag. So I'll show you what that looks like as well. But I can see this being very useful if you're using the Project Center. And then the ability to replace resources. This, in my opinion, is probably the biggest add because in the past you had to delete the resource booking and recreate it with a new resource, which was not ideal. But now they give you the ability to swap a resource for another resource inside the Project Center. So let's jump into OpenAir. So we'll jump in here. We'll start in order. What I did was I went into administration, project settings, and under project settings, there is this Project Center options. In a previous release, they've released the ability to exclude certain resource booking types from the calculation of availability. So for example, if I don't want requested to factor into availability, then I can exclude those in my calculation. Same thing if you're using booking approvals, you have the same kind of concept. What's new here is this ability to add this color coding. So here you can set your indicator for a warning indicator, and then here you can come in and you can set your color coding similar to what you can do in reporting. Looks very much like the reporting color coding option as well, to be able to set that. So this is what is part of this new release. If we jump here into this test project, I can see here that Kim is scheduled for 40 hours. What I can now have the ability to do is I can come in here and I can extend that just by dragging and dropping. I can also extend it vertically as well. So you can come in here and you can move things around. You can also you can do multiple rows together. Sorry. Using shift. Oh, dragging, sorry. There we go. So it gives you the ability to drag and drop, be able to drag vertically, horizontally, and then if you like what you see, if you don't like what you see, you'll need to hit discard, and it will bring you back to where you started. If you like what you see, you can go ahead and hit save. Just be clear, it's gonna, if you hit discard and you haven't saved, it's gonna discard all your changes. So it's important to save often. If you have some changes you want to save, other changes you want to play with before you, and then ultimately discard them. When you discard, you will lose anything since the last save. So just be aware of that. And then the last is being able to come in here and be able to say, I'm going to swap resources. So here I can come in and say, I'm going to swap Trey for, and you'll notice it went from Richard to Trey. So immediately I was able to swap on the bookings for them. So quickly having to be able to come here and swap resources. So I can see the use case really nice here where you're coming in, maybe you've got generic resources outlined in your project and you're ready to start swapping those generics for named resources. Instead of having to delete, recreate, you can come in here and do a swap. So that's kind of a nice add, in my opinion. Okay, advanced filters. So again, they made some changes to the advanced filter functionality in the last couple of releases. There was some grumbling among the OpenAir community about the fact that the panel was covering up data, which was kind of painful. Well, they fixed that in this release, which is nice. So the panel doesn't overlap the list view, and they've done some other options as well. So you can now create a filter and without saving it. So you could do a filter, hit apply, and it will show you the results. And if you don't plan to ever need that filter again, you can just abandon it and it will not be saved. Or if you do like, if the filter gives you what you want and it's something that's going to be reusable, you can then go in and save that filter. I'll show you that in a moment. And then if you have lots of filters, which we can, the filter list can get quite long. Now you can basically come in here and you can actually search your filters. So there's a new space on top of the filter drop down that gives you the ability to search. And lastly, in the resource module and some of the views, especially like booking list view, it inherently will not show you inactive resources on bookings in the past, or even in the future. Let's say someone has been inactivated, but you didn't remove their bookings and they're booked, into the future. There is now an option in the resource options to be able to allow inactive bookings in employee searches. So this is a newer feature. So let me show you what some of this looks like. So if we jump here into our list view, if I want to come in and create a new filter, I can come in here and you'll notice I haven't lost any visibility into my list view. I can come in here and say, let's create a, let's see, we can search this and find what we're looking for. So we want to find our project. Let's say project contains, which is probably the most common filter. And you'll see here on the right, I have apply, and then I have, if I want to save it, I can save it and apply it. So this gives you the ability to create a filter. And if you don't want to save the filter, you can just hit apply and it will run the filter, save it temporarily, but it will not save it permanently. And then if you clear this, the filter will go away, and obviously you'll get to your full list. So this is, interesting add-on to this option. I could see could be useful. The other useful thing I think is if you look at your list of filters, we could see in the sandbox there's quite a few filters. I want to come in here and search for a filter. So I have a name filter, and then I won't say it's going to go ahead and replace what I had before with the new filter that's saved. So this search filter is another option that could be helpful if you have a long list of filters. Also, there's some couple new options with the list views and the list column filters. So in the list view, I don't think I ever realized this, but you could not filter on the assigned to on the task view. So on the task list view, you can now search and assign to and by resource. I'll show you that. And then also the meta values like all or none they weren't indistinguishable from the other values, so they kind of got lost in the shuffle. They have called those out with the dashes and spacing so that they are more pronounced in the list view. So let's take a look real quick. So here in my list view, let me clear my filter. Let's see. I guess still have there we go. So we can see the all here is called out. I think I still have a filter in place. Let's get rid of that. So here I can see I have some gaps in my data set. So here I can have all, I can click none, and it's a little more pronounced and towards the top of the list than the other options. And then if I come into a project list view, let's come into this guy, go into phases and task list. Oh goodness. One second. This assigned to is now available. So I can sit here and say, show me everywhere Kim, all the tasks Kim is assigned to in my project plan. So obviously it's not very useful when you have just a small number of tasks, but if you use an OpenAir with a larger number of tasks and you want to be able to drill down to a certain resource, you can now do that using this assigned to within the list view. So a few OA NetSuite connectors for those of you that have both OpenAir and NetSuite. They're continuing to invest and add value to this connector. They recently enhanced the filter ability of being able to send records from OpenAir to NetSuite. but you cannot do the reverse. You cannot use the same filter function when bringing records back in from NetSuite. Well, in this release, they have extended the export filter to now be included in the import filters. So the imports now is more of a drag and drop. It's less complicated. You don't have to have any sort of coding to do filtering anymore. And so it makes a much more simpler logic for creating those filters to say, bring only records from NetSuite that meet a certain criteria. Now we can do that as part of our import process. There was another release item a couple of releases ago that allowed you to create custom export workflows. So if you wanted to create data in NetSuite from OpenAir, you could create these custom export workflows. And at that point, it was create only. So let's say you wanted to take cost centers in OpenAir and you wanted to create records in NetSuite. You could create them, but if you've updated them in OpenAir, they would not update. So they've extended in the integration now to be able to create and update for these custom export workflows. So also, if you are looking in the integration, and I'll show this one to you, you have the option each chapter to do different settings. If you click to the settings, it will actually open up the OpenAir help. So it'll give you a description of what the setting does. So if you're unsure of what the setting option means, instead of having to go look in Suite Answers, you can actually just click on it and it will bring you to the Suite Answer. Another one, this one to me is probably the best of all these. For those of you that are generating credit memos using the credit rebill function in OpenAir, as you may know, when you're exporting regular invoices from OpenAir NetSuite, you can map project-related data inside the invoice to bring over to the invoice header in NetSuite. As long as you're doing one project per invoice, you have the ability to map that. But you did not have that same ability for credit memos. So credit memos were coming over without the project information that you may have mapped. Well, now you can. So now they've added the ability to map the project level data for the credit memo that you can already do for the invoicing menu. And that's a big help for being able to get consistent data in NetSuite from OpenAir. So if we take a quick look here, I go to my NetSuite connector. I go to my mapping and look at one chapter here. Sorry, there we go. In the settings, you'll see these settings are links now where they didn't used to be. So I may want to say, well, what does this mean to enable the purchaser integration? So I can click down to this link, and it'll bring me into the Help Center, and it'll give me a description of what that means. So that's a nice quick fit feature to be able to help answer any questions you might have around any of these optional settings. So let's go back to the last highlight for this last release is the SAML. So in the past, if you were interested in implementing SAML or SSO in your environment, we would need to log a case with OpenAir. OpenAir would ask you to send them your metadata, where they would install it on the back end, and then there was the setup by the engineers in your company to finish the setup. So OpenAir SAML works. In this current release, you will now be able to upload with a switch turned on. You'll be able to upload your own SAML certificates into OpenAir without needing support. So it gives you the ability to more self-service on your setting up your SAML, and allows you to be more efficient with that setup. If you should enable this feature for your account before you need to replace or renew your security, and this is one of those you'll need to contact OpenAir support. So that's what I have for today from this last release, some of the highlights that we found. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. I want to appreciate everyone's